Thank you all for joining us for the Overcoming Writer's Block and Perfectionist Tendencies workshop. In this workshop, we'll be evaluating and discussing strategies that can combat writer's block and perfectionism in order to keep your assignments and projects on track. Joining us today is Layla Barati, coordinator at Writing Center. I'll hand it over to Layla to get us started.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I hope you can hear me clearly. If it's too loud, please turn down the volume on your computer, whatever device you're listening on. I see we're a small group here today, which is perfect because if you would like, you are more than welcome to engage in the chat as what was already suggested. I might refer to you, if you're sharing something, I might talk to you directly. So if you're comfortable and you want to engage that way. So this workshop is really just intended to be, it's low stakes. We're all here because we clearly want to learn about writer's block and how to combat our perfectionist tendencies. I can think of no better person to conduct this workshop than me because I am a recovering perfectionist. So if anything, I can relate to you the most. So if any moment throughout this presentation you have a thought or a question or something you'd like to add on to, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And if I see it, I will engage with you, or you can talk amongst your peers, whatever makes you comfortable. So I believe this workshop is set to be about an hour and a half. It might be that long, might be a little shorter. So grab some water, get yourself situated and comfortable. I'd also like to say that this will be available for you later. So if you miss something or you'd like to spend more time on a certain slide or idea, it will be available to you. So if you're here for writer's block, you're in the right place. If you have written something the first time perfectly and you've never experienced writer's block and you're not a perfectionist, you might be in the wrong place. But I have a feeling that we're all going to be able to relate to this presentation today. So without further ado, let's go over it. All right, so as you can see, in this workshop, we will discuss some reasons for writer's block, why you might be having it, define imposter syndrome, the infamous imposter syndrome, examine the relationship between writer's block and perfectionism, identify some strategies for making time to write and maintaining focus as you write, and we're going to learn some ways to write through writer's block and overcome that perfectionism, ideally. And of course, we are going to do some writing. So in this workshop, I suggest having a scrap piece of paper, a notebook or something, and a pen or pencil handy so that you can do some writing. So you're actually going to be interacting in this workshop. If you prefer to write on your computer or your phone, whatever works for you, just so that you're ready for that. All right. Does this look familiar? Or is this you? This is an old meme, an oldie, but this is a goodie. I know that I've felt this way whenever I've looked at a giant writing task that I had and the impending, the deadline is just looming over my head. It happens because writing is hard. Most writers at some point have found that writing is difficult. It's a complex task. If anyone says it's easy, you should call them out because they're lying. There's no way. I think we don't think enough about how hard writing actually is. And then we feel guilty about it. And we kind of beat ourselves up for not being quote unquote good at it. But writing is a lot more than just fingers on a keyboard or hand on paper. Writing is translating thoughts in your head to words on a page. It's identifying your audience needs and determining how to best communicate them. It's reflecting on your interests, your past experiences, conversations you've had with teachers. It's the research, the reading, all of the knowledge that comes with it. It's taking breaks to take care of yourself, making outlines, notes, and drafts. That's not even to say to include the revising, the editing, and the proofreading and the polishing you have to do. It's a lot. I feel like we don't necessarily break it down like that to kind of give ourselves a break as to why writing is really hard. Um, so I just wanted to take a moment to normalize how common the overwhelming feelings are when you're in this process. There's nothing wrong with you if you've ever experienced writer's block. I've experienced it. The best writers of all time have experienced it. It's totally normal. And I think as we begin to accept that, you'll find it easier to fight off the guilt or combat those negative feelings that are associated with writing. So then you can also feel better prepared to work through it when it does happen. So let's talk for a few minutes about what is writer's block and what causes it. What is writer's block? So writing anxiety and writer's block are terms for all kinds of mainly negative feelings about writing. These feelings may not exist all the time or each time you sit down to write. So this really suggests that anxiety and writer's block are situational. These terms do not describe psychological attributes or on you. People aren't born anxious writers. Rather, they become anxious or blocked through negative or difficult experiences with writing. Maybe you relate to this. I think sometimes we enter a writing space with previous experiences that set up negative expectations for our abilities and feelings towards writing. So maybe a professor told you once that you were horrible at writing thesis statements, or you always had run-ons, or your writing wasn't clear. Or maybe you yourself grew up like since elementary school thinking, I'm horrible at writing. I'm not a good writer. I don't expect to do well. I myself, I'm not a math person. I'm really bad at math. I had a hard time with math in high school, and it was very intimidating when I grew up with it. Anytime I had to do it, I was anxious. I felt like I was going to disappoint my instructors, and that made my anxieties that much worse. If you're a math person, kudos to you. I don't know how you do it. It's really hard. But likewise, so was writing. But I think if we take the time to really check ourselves and where we're at and look at where these thoughts are coming from, we can get a sense of how we can then combat those negative associations, especially when they prevent you from being successful and writing. So a lot of times this manifests itself in imposter syndrome. So the infamous imposter syndrome. Um, if you've, I don't know, maybe I have to ask, have you ever felt imposter syndrome? You can say that in the chat. You can all kind of commiserate because I'm sure that's a very common thing. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you don't deserve to be where you are and that you'll be exposed as an imposter. Yep, there it is. I would be shocked if no one's felt this. I would be like, please give me whatever magical potion that you've been drinking because it would solve all of our problems. It's a feeling of self-doubt, insecurity, or fraudulence despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So it's very common in graduate school. I'm sure by now you felt it or you're going to feel it. But many graduate students feel that they don't belong, like they don't know what they're doing, or they feel like they don't have the qualifications needed to do the work. And that can really stall your ability to push forward. I think it's important to recognize that imposter syndrome strikes smart, successful, and even experts in their respective fields. I think I read even somewhere that if you're an expert, you're more likely to experience imposter syndrome because with all of the knowledge that you have, you also have that realization that there's so much you don't know. So it's more likely to strike you if you know more. So that's the kind of ironic dynamic of that. But it often appears after especially notable accomplishment, like admission to a prestigious university or some public acclaim or winning an award, getting a new job, earning a promotion, or maybe even for you as you've entered grad school. But one reason graduate students suffer from imposter syndrome is because they're just starting out in their field, just started. They're constantly surrounded by higher level professionals who've worked in the field for decades, right? Your professors, think your advisors, they've been there for a while, right? It makes you feel like that you're not quite up to par, right? But it makes sense that you feel that way. For me, imposter syndrome is kind of funny because it's,
Layla, sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off.
yes.
The connection kind of got cut. You said it makes you feel like, and then we got cut over there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was wondering if it was going to have some audio issues. Thank you. Yeah, just let me know if that ever happens. Um, I was saying how imposter syndrome is funny to me because it reminds me of, like, it's basically just a manifestation of all of our insecurities that we might get called out on, right? So kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you sit down to have your meal and the server's like, "Oh, well, enjoy your meal." And you're like, "Thanks, you too." And then you're kind of like, "Oh, why did I say that? I'm so dumb. Why did I say that?" And you're just kind of like sitting there awkwardly. But the reality is the server isn't going to be like, "Wow, this person just told me to have a great meal. I'm not even eating anything." Like, they're not going to do that. They know why you're there. You know why you're there. Everybody's on the same page. Just like no one's going to say, "Wow, he doesn't know how to write a thesis or a dissertation." Like, that's not going to happen, right? But we have that feeling of insecurity that someone's going to call us out for not knowing something. But you're learning, and that's totally normal. And you also do know things, and you are capable. That's a big part of this process. You're here for a reason. Professors know it. We know it. You should know it too. So you're probably thinking, okay, but I just want to make sure my work is good and up to par with people in my field. What's wrong with that? And what does this have to do with writer's block and perfectionism? So I wanted to share this quote with you just to give you some food for thought. So I'll read it. "Perfectionism will keep you cramped and insane your whole life, and it is the main obstacle between you and a shitty first draft." And I think we need to embrace the power of that shitty first draft. This is a quote from Anne Lamott. Um, yes, we want everything we write to be fantastic, but we're still learning, right? And you will be for a while, and that's okay. So you may use your time wisely now to make your work as good as you can, but understand that your abilities are not at their peak yet, and that's fine. You're not going to be able to grow if you don't allow yourself to write down that shitty first draft. You can't make anything unless you write something down. Um, in fact, the story I always tell about myself is that I have this toxic relationship with notebooks where I'll buy a ton of notebooks and they're like beautiful. Like, this one's leather, this one is portable. I can move, I'm going to write more with this one. And then I never do it because I think, like, oh, it's so ugly and I'm going to mess it up somehow with my writing or my handwriting. And then what ends up happening is the deadline comes and I have to write something. So I grab a scrap piece of paper and I start writing something down. And that's what I end up using, is the scrap piece of paper. That's where my ideas are formed. And I can then use it to create something. And now I have all these gorgeous notebooks that I don't use. So I think embracing that shitty first draft is really the first step, in Anne Lamott's words. Um, you know, it might not be perfect, but it's yours. So though you may feel like a fraud now and you don't belong, or that you're lucky that you got here, or that you might downplay your achievements, remember that this is your research, your thesis, your dissertation, your project proposal. It might not be a masterpiece, but it's yours. And eventually, you might know more than your professor or your advisor in the future. A lot of us don't think about that. You never know down the line. Just some food for thought. So let's talk a little bit about some ways you may block yourself through perfectionism hiding in the form of procrastination. So maybe this is familiar to you. If so, I mean, feel free at any point to engage in the chat. I know these are the common four that I use, but maybe you need the perfect time of day. You might think, I'm a morning writer and it's noon already, so I kind of miss my shot. So I'll write another day, right? And you move it on to another day. Or you could say something like, okay, I need the perfect location. I can only write in my living room when it's quiet and my roommate is watching a movie and it's too loud, so I won't write today, right? So we might kind of hide it in that way. Or your mood, right? I can't write, I'm in a bad mood. Some guy cut me off in traffic and my coffee was the wrong order, and then we might write it off. Granted, you should always take care of your mental health. If you can't, mentally get on the right page with yourself and your writing, you can take a break. But sometimes we might use that mood as an excuse too to hide or run away from writing, right? And also finding sources. This is something that I've done. I usually try to get a bunch of my research and stuff done first. And I say, oh, I'm doing my work. I'm doing the research. I'm doing the hard work now. So I can't get to writing just yet because but it's okay because I'm looking for my sources for my lit review. So it kind of hides itself in the form of procrastination. It's this feeling and need to get things down right and correctly the first time. So obviously there are other causes of writer's block. Maybe these are familiar to you. One being your inner critic. Sometimes we're our worst critics, right? Or our self-perception of our abilities. Or maybe you had past criticism, like I mentioned earlier, from another professor or a teacher, or even like family members for some reason, friends. Yeah, someone mentioned lit review resources, writing. Yeah, exactly. You can relate to locate. Yeah, I see a lot of people relating in the chat. um, exactly. Sometimes you might also have high expectations of yourself. If these resonate with you, you know, I'm right there with you. Maybe you have this super high expectation that you need to be a certain way. I'm like that. I know at the end of this presentation, I'm going to be like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? It stops you from doing what you need to do. Um, or maybe you have pressure from other people. Maybe you're afraid of success even. I think sometimes we don't think of that. Like, what would happen if I succeeded? What would happen if I finished this? What would that mean for me? What would that mean in terms of like getting a job after and my professors, like my colleagues, and potentially moving forward? I'd have to change my life, things like that. Um, that I feel like we don't think about that one too much, but it can have a big impact. But again, having overly high expectations or perceiving that you have them from professors or other people in your life, that can really stop you. Also, if you're feeling burnt out or distracted, if you have a lot of things going on in your life, there's tons of things that can distract you. We are busy people, right? Especially if you're a grad student, you know, there's tons of things that can make you feel burnt out and distracted. Also, low energy due to diet, hydration, exercise, right? Trust me, no matter what you do or no matter how hard you try to convince yourself, right? You're not going to do your best work on only 4 hours of sleep, a diet of stale Doritos and some microwavables. Like we've all done it, but you're not going to be able to do it like that. Maybe you did it once, but you're not going to be able to produce your best work if you don't sleep, drink, eat at regular times. So that's part of the process too, is taking care of yourself and your body. I've tried to just drink my problems away with water. Like if I just stay hydrated, not other things, just water. If I just stay hydrated, all my problems will go away. But it doesn't work. Trust me. I need to take my own advice. Also, writing in new forms. That's difficult. If it's something is new and unfamiliar, you're probably going to struggle with it. And that's okay. Maybe you're writing on a difficult or new subject matter. If you're unfamiliar with it, you're going to probably need some extra help. And that alone is going to make you feel like I'm stuck. That's totally normal. Don't forget the room temp coffee. Yeah, exactly. Maybe you have too much or not enough to say, right? So you have a lot of thoughts going on in your head and you just don't know how to articulate them. Or maybe you just have no clue where to start. Maybe you have too much or not enough to do, right? You have too many tasks, too many deadlines coming up. The Writing Center, also, this is a great time to plug in the Writing Center, is perfect for this because we can help you think through those ideas and work through those bumps in the road or those ruts that you get into. And last but not least, approaching deadlines. Right. I like how the chat is that this is exactly what this is for. We're all commiserating. Maybe you have an approaching deadline, right? For me, this is the biggest one for me. Sometimes just the thought of a looming deadline can stop you dead in your tracks. But when we take the time to identify the causes of our writer's block, we can regain control of the situation so that we can get back on track. That way, the writer's block doesn't control you. You can control the writer's block. I know there's been a lot of AC outages lately, and that can definitely prevent you from writing. We're actually going to talk about location later on in the workshop. But right now I have an activity for y'all. This is kind of a small reflection activity. It's to get the juices going. And basically, I'm going to set a timer for about 3 minutes. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to have a little bit of reflecting, and I'm going to encourage you to think about these questions. I'm assuming at some point you've had writer's block, right? But some of the questions are, why do you get stuck, or what causes you to feel stuck? What are some of the feelings or reactions you have when you get stuck? At what points in your writing or at what times do you typically get stuck? And so the goal of this is just to write 2 to 3 minutes about these, and then just don't think too hard about it. You're just writing. Don't have to worry about grammar. You don't have to worry about sentence structure. Just whatever comes naturally to you, just write for 2 to 3 minutes. If you prefer, you can type your answers in the chat if you want to do it there, if that's better for you. You can also keep them to yourself if you prefer that. So I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and I'll give you like a 15-second warning when the timer is up. If you have questions, feel free to put in the chat. Take another 30 seconds. All right, I see some answers flowing in. I see getting started is a big one. I know that's a common one. That's also my issue too. Yep. See some flow. How was this for you then? I had you write this just all of a sudden with no preparation. Was this experience odd to only have like 3 minutes to just write? That's kind of like a feel free to respond or answer. It's kind of rhetorical, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Someone said, I think it's great because we don't have time to overthink. We just say what's on our mind. That's kind of a little, yeah, it's such a different experience. Doesn't feel threatening. I like that you pointed that out because that's one of the strategies we're going to go over later. Right now, I'm going to go over like a quote, and then we're going to really get into another writing activity. And the goal is to do exactly this: jumpstart, get that air out all of our worries right now because they're very normal and valid, and then just nip it in the bud and get to it so that we can really combat this writer's block and perfectionist tendencies that we got. So I'm glad to see y'all are sharing. These are excellent. So in the meantime, I'd like to talk about this as you guys are kind of like talking and adding things. I'd like to share this quote. It's kind of a long one, but it's by researcher Helen Swart, who examined 1,323 academic staff, PhD students, and postdoc researchers in 15 countries to learn about how they write. So this is what she found. Writing is neither a daily routine nor a rare occurrence, neither an immovable constant nor a random event. The secret to academic success lies in a complex cluster of attributes and attitudes. That, uh, that is what she calls the writing base: behavioral habits of discipline and persistence, artisanal habits of craftsmanship and pride, social habits of collegiality and collaboration, and emotional habits of positivity and resilience. We won't get too much into the concept of base today, but I think it's a really useful resource to start thinking about as you begin to learn more about yourself as a writer. The main purpose of this quote is to get you to think about success in the through the idea of habits, right? So whether it's overcoming writer's block and perfectionism, by acknowledging the writing process as a series of habits, you're going to have a better chance of addressing these things, right? Behavioral habits in particular are a great place to start. We're going to talk about that today because those are traits that we have the most control over. If you want to know more about building your base habits, or if you're interested in the concept of base, since we can't go too much in depth today, there's a useful link on the Tools for Overcoming Writer's Block handout that is combined with this workshop. So it should be in the module. It has a ton of useful resources for you to look at, including this one. And in it is also linked the little quiz that you can take that tells you about your base habits. So it's a way to self-reflect and identify where you might need a little bit more support and where maybe you're good in terms of your writing habits. It's very brief, very short. And if you read the book as well, it kind of tells you more about those specific habits and sections. Um, but now that we're kind of warmed up already with writing, now I'm going to give you a bigger writing task. These questions are a little bit more in depth. And I'd like you to take a moment just to look at each of these questions to reflect on your writing habits. If you're comfortable with sharing those, as you've already been doing, feel free to type those in the chat. I'm going to give you another maybe 3 or 4 minutes to write. 4 should be enough. Again, the goal is just to free write, just mind dump. Don't worry about grammar and spelling and things like that. Your thoughts don't even have to make sense. The goal is just to write. All right, so I'm going to give you another 3, 4 minutes. Have about 15 seconds. All right. It's a little, I wonder, I'm interested in hearing if y'all are having a good time with the time limit, right? Like, oh, in 3 minutes, do you feel like, yeah, easy, I got everything down? Or if it's 3 minutes too short? So that's also part of it, right? And one of the strategies we're going to talk about is writing in chunks and also writing, just speed writing. But I see some good answers in there. A lot of them are very relatable. Um, but yeah, the goal of this is basically to understand your process, because that's the first, too short, yeah. That's the first part of recognizing where the writer's block is coming from, where is the perfectionism coming from, and how to combat it so that you can be successful and continue writing. Um, I suggest holding on to any of the writing that you do here in this workshop, because it might be helpful for you later when you're in a rut, or if you get stuck, you might look back on it and think, oh yeah, I have to think about these things and understand where I'm coming from so that I can work on these things. Or you might draw back on them later in this workshop. So please keep this, all of your writing handy. All right. Uh, these. Here are some more questions. I always forget these, but let's take a moment. Let's do something different. Let's take a moment to answer these right now with no time. How does it feel to not have time to be prepared? If you want, put some answers in the chat. How do you revise and edit? When do you know when the piece is finished? How do you procrastinate? I think if someone asked me that, my list would be endless. How do you motivate yourself to get back into writing, especially when you don't want to? Sometimes I write for hours until I fall asleep. Yeah. Having no time to write. Yeah, that's horrible. Some people are acknowledging they need quiet. They need a good environment. I know I personally procrastinate by cleaning. So I normally don't like to clean, but I always joke that my house has never been cleaner than when I have a deadline because I'm trying to avoid it. So I'm cleaning my house, making sure everything's organized and prepared instead of just doing what I need to do. Okay, see some processes in there. For motivation, just do it. Some stuff is better than no stuff. I completely agree. I see a hand is raised. Did you have a question?
May I answer the questions on the screen?
Yeah, by all
It's
means, go
easier
ahead.
for me to talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no problem.
Usually I have a 1 week deadline for my writing. So the first day I start writing, I don't care what I write. I leave it for like 1 or 2 days, then I come back and of course I will advance to other parts that I'm writing. But then like after 2 days, I go back and review what I wrote with a fresh mind, because when you're writing, it's easy to get into like, okay, I wrote this, so it should be perfect. But when you remove yourself from that environment for like 1 or 2 days and come back, you have a better sense of, okay, is this something that the readers would understand? And definitely the jargons, things like that, which I know the small audience that are studying what I study know, but like for the majority of people, those aren't well known. So I make sure that I will not use any jargons, or if I use it, I will define it in the first time that they appear in text. When do I know the piece of writing is finally finished? Honestly, never. It's not gonna
Right.
happen for me. It's just I usually hand my writings to my advisor or one or two of my friends, and they will comment, and I will work on it for the next week. How do you procrastinate? Okay, I'm a professional procrastinator. I can
Same.
procrastinate so much that, oh my God. But the thing that helps me to stop my procrastination is the deadline. I really can handle deadlines really well. So whenever I do any projects or writings, if there is no deadline, I set a deadline for myself, and I say that, okay, by this time, this should be over, and I'm not gonna work on it anymore. Of course, here and then, I usually, pass that deadline, but and extend that deadline for myself. But usually, I'm really good to keep everything in that time frame that I set for myself. How do I motivate myself? Little prizes when I finish anything. Like now you can go and play that game that you wanted. Now you can. It's weekend, right? Now you can go go out with your friends and hang out with them. Things like that. And
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, and I think those are the gist of the things that I would do to motivate myself.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Actually, as you're going through all of those things, a lot of those things are things that we're going to talk about today too. So I like how you're already kind of self-aware and you're aware of your process and things that you do. And thanks for sharing, because this whole workshop is hopefully to help us and each other get ideas of how to understand our writing habits, and then also build some strategies, which I'm going to give right now as well. So y'all can, of course, keep talking in the chat, but I'm going to review some strategies to start writing then, because a lot of y'all mentioned that starting writing is difficult, and I agree. I'm right there with you. We're going to cover strategies to help you with this perfectionism and move that writing forward. So first, I guess you could think of these as tools for your toolbox in the future. And the first thing that I would recommend to start is take notes. So who says that writing has to begin as soon as you title your Word document or Google Doc thesis or dissertation or lit review or whatever you label your writing? Writing takes many forms. And getting anything on paper is already useful and a valid form of writing. Taking notes is a valid form of writing. If that's where you have to start, you can start there. Taking notes on what you read, on what you think you know, on what you still have to do research on, what your hypothesis is, what your plans are. This is helpful to do when you're just getting started, but also when you have like a bump in the road and you've got a writer's block moment where you were going good and now you're not sure where to go. You can take notes at any step of the process, and that alone can get you going, even if you just need to take a moment to reorient yourself. So taking notes, that's one. Also, think in terms of drafts. You're going to revise your paper no matter what, right? Or you should. So why not have something to revise? It's helpful to think of writing as a process. A piece of writing doesn't have to be just one and done. Get that shitty first draft started, as Anne Lamott said, right? You'll find that, it means you don't have to start at the beginning. You can even write it in pieces, right? If you just want to write your introduction, your conclusion, start with something you know, and over time you can just go back and fix it, or you can flesh it all out. You're going to go in knowing that it's not going to be perfect at first try, right? And that's okay. You can give yourself that permission to write that crappy first draft. It doesn't have to be in its final form. So reminding yourself of that can really combat those perfectionist tendencies, because you're already going in knowing it's intentionally going to be bad, and that's fine. Because oftentimes those perfectionist tendencies overwhelm us, and they kind of block that creative process, especially when you get overwhelmed and something doesn't immediately look like what you want it to look like first try. Also, break large tasks into smaller ones so they're more manageable. Don't think about writing a literature review. Think about taking notes on what is significant in one source or about one issue. Or you could say, today I'm going to look over 2 of my sources, or I'm going to just look over my research question and make sure it's sound, right? Don't say, today I'm going to write my dissertation. I'm going to work on my dissertation, because what does that mean, right? That process is super overwhelming. That is a huge task. Breaking your task down into smaller segments and pieces is going to make it more manageable, more achievable, and it's going to decrease the amount of stress and pressure that comes with it. I always recommend that one. Also, make an outline or a list. Breaking down your project into smaller tasks is going to be helpful, right? But you can also put it on a to-do list so that you have something to check off when you've finished. That process of checking it off of a list can make you feel like you're making progress, and that progress will keep you invested in the process. You know, sometimes you also get overwhelmed because you're trying to remember all of the things that you have to do. So if you write it down on a list, you can kind of compartmentalize and visualize what you have to do. Your lists can be formal, they can be informal, they can be for your writing, they can be for not even for your writing. They could be for things that are unrelated. Like, say you have a bunch of things that you have to do, like for the day. You have to go grocery shopping, you have to go get gas for the car, you have to email your professor and things like that. And all of that can be really, really distracting too. But if you write them down and you kind of in your brain tell yourself, okay, here are all the things that I need to do. I know I have to do them, but for right now, I'm going to focus on my writing. So I have my list here so I won't forget all of the things, and I'll do them later. That alone can help your brain just kind of like compartmentalize what you have to do versus what you can do later, right? So lists can be actually very, very useful. So maybe try making a list next time you're stuck. Also, start with what you know or where you have ideas. There's no rule that says you have to start from the beginning. You don't have to start with your intro. If getting started is where you get blocked, you don't have to start at the intro. What if you just started with like stuff that you already feel prepared to write about, like the research part or the methods or whatever it is that you're working on that you feel comfortable starting? You can just pick that task, pick the task that seems the easiest and start from there. Also, speed write. We kind of did a little bit of that today. Kind of just jumped right in it. You're just kind of, all right, you got 3 minutes, go. That's it, right? It's kind of uncomfortable for some people, and other people it's a little liberating, right? Speed writing is also good for people who are competitive. Like if you have a really short amount of time, maybe you have 5 minutes before class starts and you just need an energy boost, you could just set a short time limit and just write about anything that you have to do, like a task in the future. You might not even have all your supplies or your research in front of you, but just set for 5 minutes, maybe try to write 500 words in 5 minutes, and see if that gives you the jolt of energy that you need to keep going. And maybe it'll just be like a really bad draft and it doesn't get you anywhere. Or maybe you will have a really solid sentence in there that you're like, that's good. I'm going to use that for my actual dissertation or thesis or whatever you're writing. You can still use things from that practice. On our tools handout, the Tools for Overcoming Writer's Block handout, there is this application called the Most Dangerous Writing app, which I think is really cool because basically you set a time goal for like 5 minutes or something, and you have to write nonstop. You cannot stop. If you stop, the application deletes everything that you just wrote. So there's like a little bit of anxiety involved in it, but it's also freeing because you can just write. Like there's nothing holding you back. Like if it was totally crap, who would know? It got deleted, right? And it's liberating because you can just write. So I do recommend checking out that app. That might be overwhelming for some, so you don't have to. If it's a little too much, you can always just do just a regular free write, like we did today, right? If you set a particular issue or question you had to write about, say that that's what you're going to write about and don't stop writing. Write as fast as you can think. Here too, you don't have to worry about completing sentences or ideas that make sense. The result was probably going to be cleaner than the speed writing, but you can always polish and fix anything after, right? The goal is to get started. So with this process, you can do this multiple times. You don't have to just do it once, right? You could do it throughout your entire writing process for whatever project you're working on. Because sometimes all of these thoughts are swirling in your head and they're related to something else and they're stressing you out and they're frustrating you. Whatever it is, you can use free writing to get it out of your head, even if it isn't related to your project. And that will hopefully help you get focused too. It'll help you focus on what you have in front of you once all of the stress and things is just like out of your brain for the moment. So I do recommend free writing, and also turn off your editing tools. If you get distracted by editing as you write, turn them off. Don't let those like little blue and red squiggly lines distract you. It's really hard sometimes. Sometimes they're more distracting than they are helpful, to be honest. I like to think about it that there's two types of writer voices in my head. There's the creative voice that helps me create, and then there's the editor voice that like judges everything that I do. And it's really important to like turn that voice off, right? When you're creating, you have to turn off the editor's voice, because then it'll stop you from really moving on through the process, because you'll be focusing on revising when it's not time yet. So turn off those editing tools, turn off that editor voice when it's, especially when it's getting in the way of you just getting that draft down. And last but not least, explain it to somebody, right? Maybe you're having difficulty making an idea come across clearly, or maybe you have a bunch of ideas and you're just trying to see how they connect. Regardless, it's always easier to talk it through with somebody. And that way you can kind of get a sense of like what might be missing, right? When you're talking to someone, that person can also give you feedback, right? Maybe they can point out, wait, I don't get why point A is connected to point B. Like you didn't explain that. And that will kind of tell you, oh, that's where I need to kind of fill in the gaps, or that's where I need some idea development. And it could be anybody. You can explain it to a roommate, partner, a friend, your dog. I don't know how much feedback your dog will give you, but sometimes just the act of explaining it can help you organize your thoughts. All right, let's do some more practice. So this one's going to be a little shorter. This one's just a little bit of a warm up. It's going to be quick. Right now, you're going to make a list and take some notes on a task that you're currently working on, or that you're going to, that is coming up. So the guidelines for this one is you're going to take 1 to 2 minutes. Maybe I'm going to give you, well, yeah, let's do 1 minute. We're going to go really quick. 1 minute. Write as much as you can and try not to stop. Just go where your brain takes you. Write fast, no complete sentences, and don't edit. You're making a list and you're taking notes in just 1 minute. Let's just see what you come up with. Let's see how fast you can go. 1 minute starting now. Five seconds. All right. That's 1 minute. I wonder, how was that? Was that stressful? I think one of the things that you can do to this is if you go back to your list, you make sure that you write something very specific. So earlier, if you wrote, start writing my thesis, I recommend you go back and you say, think smaller, right? Maybe synthesize a source or a topic for B, or maybe start formulating research question, right? So maybe when you go back to look at this list, kind of think about, okay, I said I was going to start my dissertation. What does that mean, right? This is the process. First, getting it down, later revising. Okay. Now that we've done a little bit of some warm up, let's get into this writing prompt. Okay, so now that you've had that warm up, here's what we're going to do. You'll have 3 minutes to answer one of these prompts, or both if you're really quick, if you really want to. But you have 2 options here. And so you can see here, one of them is pick the current task on your list that you just made and write everything you know about that topic. Know what sources discuss what that information, if you have them. What information do you still need to find? And what tasks might you also need to get done alongside this? If you don't prefer that topic, you can write about what your next step is from that list. What are you prepared for? What do you still need to do before you start? And how can you break down those steps into smaller, more manageable tasks? How else can you plan for it? I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this. And like always, feel free to type it in the chat if you prefer. So 3 minutes starting now. We have about 30 seconds left. All right. So I recommend that you keep this even if you can't share quite for this workshop. I recommend keeping this because this is what's going to help you think of these things through. And for what we're going to draw back on for the next couple of strategies that we're going to go over. Feel free to type them in the chat if you prefer. But I'd also like to note that with this prompt, I wanted to add that you'll notice that there are about 5 distinct strategies between these 2 prompts that I kind of adapted to make this activity. And that's exactly what you can do for yourself as well. You can adapt the strategies that I had mentioned previously, make them work for you. If you do better with prompts, give yourself prompts. If you do better with only one strategy over another, you use what works for you, make them work for you. You can adapt it to your process. That's what's gonna help you be more successful. So let's talk about making time to write. So one of the things that I always recommend is tracking your time, right? This seems kind of obvious. Know how much time gets sucked up spending a few minutes on Facebook or looking at TikTok or answering friends' messages. Eliminate distractions for yourself figure out just how long it takes you to do something, right? If you notice that you need a little bit of a break in between your writing, make note of that so that you can kind of track how much time it usually takes you to write something and for what reasons. Is it because of distractions? Is it because you need time to set up? Is it because you need time to remember what you had wrote previously? This is a big first step in helping you manage your time as well. So it's a key in time management. And it gives you a better sense of how to plan your writing as well for the future. And then you can keep yourself on track. Another thing is to find the most productive times of day that work for you so that you know when to set aside things to work. If you know you're a morning person and you recognize that, that might be the best time to start for you. But just be careful with the strategy and don't use this as a way to procrastinate like we talked about before, right? Because sometimes you won't always have the ideal time because life happens, right? You might not having the time to write in that exact moment, and you might push off your writing for later if you can't. So just pay attention to when you're at your best because you can then carve out time. Next strategy is so that, as grad students, you're probably very busy in your personal and professional lives, right? Add to that if you have kids, a partner, anything, like there's literally any amount of things that take time away from us, right? And those things can be very well important, but you also have to make time for you, right? Especially when it's something like this that's important for your dissertation or your writing or whatever project that you're working on. So make sure to schedule it in and hold yourself accountable. Tell your friends and family not to bother you if possible. Don't schedule meetings during that time, just write. A lot of people argue that you have to write every day. I know that sometimes that doesn't work for people. That doesn't work for me. I feel guilty if I don't work every day, and then I feel I'm a bad writer. Then writing becomes a chore and a burden. So do what's right for you. It's really good to set a consistent pattern because then you get into a habit. I know we talked about habits earlier, a habit for getting into your writing, but you don't want to set yourself up for failure either, right? So if you say I have to write every day, and then if you don't achieve that, you feel bad and the cycle repeats, right? And then you avoid writing. But I also recommend not going too long without writing too, because if you go too long, then you forget what you last wrote. And a big chunk of that writing time is just you remembering what you did last. So then you don't really create anything new. So that it's about finding a balance, excuse me, that works for you and carving out that time that best serves your schedule and your project. Another thing you can do is chunk your writing. This is similar to breaking down your things into smaller tasks. You can write in smaller bits. You can focus on individual questions or topics or results, right? Not a whole section, just specific parts of that section even. You can say, okay, I'm going to leave out transitions. I'm going to forget about the organizing and the polishing for later, because it's overwhelming to just say, today I'm going to work on my dissertation, right? It's much more manageable to just say, I'm going to write up two responses and look at two results only, or just my research question, just my conclusion. That's a lot easier and less overwhelming to do. So you can chunk it together. Like, this is my one chunk that I'm going to work on today. More chances of success that way. Set regular goals. Tell yourself you're going to go for a certain amount of words, a certain amount of pages, a certain amount of hours in a day. Anything that helps you see progress and increases your motivation, that's what's going to lead you to success. That's going to help you progress, and hopefully so you don't fall off of the track either. That motivation is super important. So reward yourself. This is last, but certainly not least. I know some had mentioned they reward themselves, which is a great strategy. Reward yourself for reaching those goals when you do. No one's going to reward you but you. Whether you allow yourself your favorite candy bar, if you've written 3 pages, you go for a walk after 2 hours, you binge a favorite season of your Netflix show, after you submitted a chapter to your advisor, maybe, whatever works for you. Everybody's a little different. There's another resource on the Overcoming Tools handout that's called Written Kitten. And basically what it is if you set a word count, maybe, 1,000 words, right? Once you reach 1,000 words, a picture of a cat pops up. It's a little silly and a little distracting, but it does give a little bit of like that motivation, like the dopamine and the serotonin you need. I think if you're not a cat person, they also have like dogs or a rabbit. But You never know. It was some things, it's a little something, whatever works for you to reward yourself if you don't want to like eat something or take a stretch or whatever. So check out that handout. It's got a lot of cool things. So let's do some more practice. This workshop's all about doing some writing. So this time I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, right? So for this one, look at your list of goals and look at your calendar for next week. Break down the task as small as you can and think, when can you carve out times to write? What might you want to do when you work during those times? And then, for a little extra, what is a reasonable reward you could give yourself when you achieve your goals? I give you about 2 minutes to do this. Again, no stress. This is a low stress prompt. Just write, write, write. Got about 30 seconds. All right. So I see some suggestions. Time can be carved out during lunch break. Oh, I like I'm always interested in seeing how people reward themselves. Going to a movie and getting dinner, buying a new outfit. I like those things. Go out for a walk, talk to friends, scroll through social media. Yeah, I think that's the one I do the most. Even though I'd love to go out to a movie, I think that's what I do the most. Talk to friends. Yeah, I just have to be careful that I don't scroll through social media and then like I'm done writing. So we're going to talk about that in a second, actually. That's perfect segue into the next part, strategies for maintaining focus, because I am horrible at this. So this is the last section we're going to talk about, the strategies for maintaining focus, because we know that could be a huge struggle sometimes. So one way is to find places that offer you a focused environment, and that could be different for everybody. If you know you need silence, maybe find a location with limited distractions. Maybe consider Lead Library or the little group work rooms that they have where you can like sign up to work in there. They're super silent, almost too silent for me, but they're perfect for when you need quiet. The Writing Center also has a computer lab that you can work. We have a ton of spaces there. It's very quiet there. If you know you work better with a little bit of background noise, maybe go to a cafe that you know that isn't too busy and too like hustle and bustle. I recommend finding locations that have less distractions in general because the goal is to maintain focus. But I do know that some people do better when there's like a little bit of sound because the silence in itself can be overwhelming. But also remember that sometimes you won't have the most optimal location available to you. And so we have to adapt. So maybe your favorite cafe is closed, or your roommate is in the room and they're being too loud, and your space is not as quiet as it could be. Sometimes you can make that location optimal for you though, so don't forget that. Maybe you can put some headphones on and play some cafe music, right? If you can't actually physically go there. Or maybe you just put the headphones on when you need to block sound out if things are quiet, right? You can change your location, use different tools around you to make the space optimal for you in that moment. Do whatever works for you, as long as it's helping you be productive and not distracting you from your writing. Also, eat and stay hydrated. I know some mentioned that this is an important part, and it is, and it seems obvious, but sometimes we forget and we eat to eat and stay hydrated. This happens to me a lot. I know, because sometimes I'm doing something and then the next thing I know, it's been 6 hours since I last like ate or drank anything because I was so focused. And then you feel really tired and things like that. Also, if you eat and you know you get tired right after lunch, which I'm sure this workshop's after lunch, so maybe some of y'all are like, I'm tired. If you know that's not the optimal time, don't do that, right? So just figure out what works for you. Stay hydrated and eat well. Basic, but absolutely necessary. Also, find some productive habits that work for you. Do you focus better when you write for a long period of time, or do you do better in like short bursts? Right? Does music help you, or does music hinder you? Does it distract you? Make your tea and your coffee ahead of time if you know that's what helps you. Get your bag of snacks ready to go if you like to snack occasionally. It can get really easy. It's really easy to get distracted by those things, right? If you're like, oh, I forgot to get my coffee, and then you go and you leave and you're getting taken out of the writing process a lot. Likewise, don't spend too much time preparing that it's been 2 hours and you've been preparing, right? So make sure those habits are working for you, not against you. Also, switch it up, right? Who says you have to do all of these the same way all the time? Do something else. Sometimes if you get stuck, you'll fall into these patterns, and that alone will kind of give you a space of like no creativity, right? And it can essentially give you the writer's block, right? If you don't switch it up a little, especially if your environment gets a little stale, you become uninspired. So, change to writing by hand if you normally write by computer or on your laptop. Go to a different location if the one you're working at doesn't work for you anymore. Jump to a different task if the one that you're working on is it's hard to get out of that rut, you get stuck. Jump to a different one. You don't have to stay and force yourself to do that one task in that moment if you're stuck. That'll also encourage your brain to start thinking about a different thing in the moment. But it will still be helping your project move forward, right? So maybe switch up your writing time too. If you're normally a day writer, write at night. See if that helps you in the moment. Whatever helps you. That's always the policy. Find the strategies that works best for you. Adapt them even. Also, take breaks. You are not a robot. As much as we feel like we have to be productive 100% of the time, 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week, you need a break. Go stretch, take a walk, go to the gym, give your brain and your mind that time. Sleep, relax, stretch, meditate, dance if you want to, whatever works for you. Those are things that can help you let your brain and your body like refocus and reorient yourself, especially when you've been writing for like a long period of time. You really need to take care of yourself. And last but not least, release frustration. It's stressful. Like we said in the beginning, writing is stressful. This can be as simple as doing something that you've been putting off, right? Doing your laundry, doing your dishes, going to the gym. Once it's done, you'll stop thinking about it. But remember not to use it as an excuse or distraction, right? Don't use it to procrastinate. But if you really have to, just get all of those feelings out because the process is being hindered by your frustration. Let it out. Scream, swear, dance, punching bag, right? Go for a run, do yoga, meditation, mindfulness. As long as you're not using them to procrastinate, you're good, right? Like I said earlier, I use cleaning to procrastinate, but sometimes if my space is too messy, I have to clean it first because it blocks my thoughts almost because the desk is messy and things are all over the place. Do what you have to do, as long as it's reasonable and that you're bringing yourself back to your original intention, which is to give yourself that time to write in that moment. All right. I believe this is our last practice. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do this one. Our last little writing thing, hopefully you've been keeping all of your writing so far, but I'm going to ask that you go back to your writing habits list from earlier. It's the one we wrote when we were talking about Helen Swartz base habits, and think about what you might be able to adjust. Do more of something that's working well or less of what's not working well for yourself this week. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do this. But yeah, you can also think about how can you make adjustments to improve your ability using the strategies that you learned here today. Let's do two or 3 minutes. We'll see. And as always, feel free to share in the chat if you want. We have about 15 seconds. All right. So hopefully these prompts have kind of been giving you a jump start to thinking about your process and what things work for you, what don't, what you might want to try in the future. But I would say the big part of that is recognizing it first, right? So hopefully you've been thinking about what usually stops me? What are my habits? What do I usually do that like sends me spiraling or stops me from writing, or what external things influence it, right? And I see someone mentioned this idea of addressing writer's block head on instead of blaming themselves for it and avoiding it. That's a big thing I used to do too, is blaming myself and feeling guilty about it. Like I was doing something wrong. It's totally normal. And like I said before, writing is hard. And anybody who says otherwise is a liar. It's hard. I've worked in writing for a long time and it's okay. So I hope these strategies are helpful and that you keep these writings alongside with your process so that you can maybe think about it more deeply in a journal in the future, or maybe now you have a clear plan of like what you're going to do moving forward to combat the perfectionism and the writer's block. So to kind of just to wrap up, just some general tips to leave you here today. Get some support from others, right? Find supportive individuals that encourage you with writing, right? Right now we're commiserating and we're seeing a lot of these processes and habits and things that block us in common. We have a lot of those things in common. So find other people who are supportive and who understand you. And if you haven't done it already, feel free to drop some suggestions in the chat if I didn't mention some here today. And also come to the Writing Center. If you don't have somebody who's supportive or if you need that extra support, come visit us at the Writing Center. We can help you through this process because it's difficult. And we help grad students as well. A lot of our consultants are grad students themselves. They totally understand. It's tough. So by all means, come and visit us. We can help you. And give yourself credit. If you've written something, that is something. That's the first step, and it's often the hardest. So be proud of yourself for doing that. Also, remember, no one's first few drafts are good. No one's. Why would that be different for you, right? You're not going to miraculously be the best, right? And it's okay to take that pressure off of yourself. Think of yourself as an apprentice. Writing is a skill, just like an art. And just like art, there aren't really levels, right? It's just more practice and less practice, right? So you don't have to see yourself or get mad as someone who's so inexperienced or an imposter that they can't do things proper, that you shouldn't be here. You belong here, and you're here for a reason. You're going to do great. And remember, you are not your writing. Separate the paper from yourself. Criticism hurts more when you attach yourself to it, right? And you can't improve in that way. So you need to separate yourself as yourself and your writing as something different, because it's not an extension of you, and it's not an extension of your intelligence, right? So if you feel you're unable to write, that does not indicate that you're not intelligent or that you can't do it. That I have to remind myself as well. Oops. Go back. Last but not least, listen and revise. Listen carefully to feedback that people do give you, because a lot of times it's with good intentions. And that can help you learn and see your own writing more effectively and objectively. And then when you apply that feedback, that's going to help you improve your skill set, right? That's where advisors and professors and other experts in the field can help you. It's a win-win. So you can revise as long as you have something written first, right? So that's the key. I also wanted to share these writing resources if you're interested in reading about these processes. This includes Helen Sword's base habits, so finding out your writing habits. The little quiz is linked here. It's also on the handout that I mentioned. If you're interested, again, don't use this to distract yourself. I like to read about it all first and then get to writing. Make sure that you balance that out and carve out some time in your day to do your writing, and your research may be separate. And last but not least, finding some guidance at UNLV. Here's how we can help you. Seek advice and guidance from your professors, your mentors, and the people I mentioned before, right? Experts in your fields. We're here to help you. And they should be here to help you too and uplift you, because you're learning. And we're working in academia to the benefit of our research together, right? Attend workshops like this one, like you're doing now. You might find that you're going to come walking away with something very helpful that you'll do for the rest of your life. Who knows? Or you'll find that none of this works for me. I need to find something different. Also valid. Make appointments at career services, right? They can help with applications, CVs, resumes, but also talk to an academic advisor, see what advice they can give you as someone who's more experienced. Also come to the Writing Center, as I've been saying. We can help you. We collaborate with you to make sure that you're doing your best work. So we won't do it for you, to clarify, but we really will help you enhance the skills that you do already have, hopefully help you recognize those patterns and behaviors maybe that you're just beginning to think about today, and really apply yourself as you begin to write. And last but not least, use online resources. There's a ton of things out there that you can find. Even the handout that I've been talking about this entire time has like this thing called Noisely or My Noise, and it's got like this ambient like sounds or like white noise, like a pond, creek, or waterfall, raindrops, firewood, sounds that help, your focus if that's your thing. There's so many things out there. And you might already have some things to add to that list. But the goal here then is to ultimately see where you're at. Where are you coming from? Be kind to yourself and recognize this is a total normal thing that you can combat and that you can take control of. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you. Hopefully these were helpful for you today. I have about 4 minutes left. If you have any questions about the Writing Center, you can always make an appointment. If you have a question about this workshop or anything, I am here for you. Hopefully this was helpful for you.
Thank you so much. It was so helpful, Layla. And, it was so interactive. Everybody was interacting in the chats. We love to see that.
Yeah, I love that. Glad.
But I think we're at the end of the workshop. If there isn't any questions, I can do the closing. seems like everybody's just thanking you. Yeah, we would like to thank you so much as well, Layla, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. And thank you to all you that joined us to learn more about today's topic. For those who is joining us for 2:30, we'll be meeting in the same room. There will be a few minutes in between workshops to allow our presenters time to set up. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. And for those who is joining, we'll be in the same room. Thank you so much, Layla, again.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.